Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. There's even a brand new Brigadier General tier where you can get a shout out on a Commander's Quarters episode that's dedicated to you. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So today's episode comes to you courtesy of Patrick, who's been supporting this channel as a Golden Pig tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Patrick, so Patrick, thank you so much. And for the personalized deck tag, Patrick actually chose a different kind of deck with the restriction that this deck needs to be built within the PEDH rules. That would be the Pauper EDH format, where you have an uncommon commander and then every single other card in your deck has to have the rarity of common. So the commander that Patrick chose for this PEDH deck is Eutropia the Twice-Favored. Eutropia is a 2/2 human wizard for 1 green-blue. She has Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1 counter on target creature. That creature gains flying until end of turn. So whenever an enchantment comes into play under your control, you give a creature a nice benefit, pumping it and also making it evasive. And of course, certain creatures out there can pack just a little more of a punch than others. So to find out exactly what this deck is built around and how exactly we're going to make the most out of Eutropia's trigger, well, let's jump into it. After, of course, I say that every single card in this deck, including the commander, is less than $1, so this is a very budget-friendly deck. And now with that said, let's jump into it. First up, Yavimaya Enchantress is a fantastic creature in this deck, a 2/2 human druid for 2 and a green that it gets +1 for each enchantment on the battlefield. So keep in mind that yes, this does count our enchantments, but it also counts our opponent's enchantments as well. Yavimaya Enchantress can be an incredibly heavy hitter throughout the game. The longer the game goes, the more enchantments we get in play, and whenever we get an enchantment in play, we get a nice little additional pump, and we make her evasive, which is probably even more important, so we can swing through and hit for a ton. Now, though she can hit for a lot, she is not the Golden Pig of this deck. In fact, the Golden Pig of this deck shows off just how powerful even common creatures can be with a commander like this when they utilize a certain keyword. And we can see what that keyword is and why it's so impactful in this deck with the Golden Pig of this deck, which is the #1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig for this deck is Blighted Agent. Blighted Agent is a 1/1 human rogue that costs 1 and a blue, and it has Infect, on top of being unblockable. Infect means that this creature deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters, and to players in the form of poison counters. So although this is just a 1/1, it's an incredibly deadly creature, especially in combination with this kind of a commander in this kind of a deck. In a multiplayer format like Commander, you start off with 40 life, but life does not matter when it comes to Infect. Poison counters matter, and just like in other formats, 10 poison counters is all you need. So the more enchantments that we get into play, the more counters we get on this, and again, giving it flying really doesn't matter because this is unblockable, and the more poison counters we can give our opponents and take them out incredibly quickly. So yeah, once we get things going, this can easily be the deadliest creature in our deck, and that's what makes it the Golden Pig. But of course, Blighted Agent has a lot of little helpers that we're going to bring along with things like Blight Mamba, Ichor Claw Mirror, and Phyrexian Digester. Blight Mamba is a 1/1 with Infect, and we can pay 1 and a green to regenerate it. And again, keep in mind that although Blight Mamba is not an evasive creature like, Blighted Agent, it still gets some evasion with our commander whenever an enchantment comes into play. And flying is usually effective enough to get it through on at least one opponent. Regardless, we also have Ichor Claw Mirror, a 1/1 with Infect that has, when it becomes blocked, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So even if it gets blocked, it gets a nice little additional pump. But of course, we're looking for pretty much every Infect creature we can get our hands on at common, so next up there's Phyrexian Digester, a simple 2/1 with Infect. And again, although this might seem like a simple creature, it's incredibly deadly with this kind of attack. So moving on, we also have Cis Bearer, Rot Wolf, and Viridian Betrayers. Cis Bearer is a simple 2/3 with Infect. Rot Wolf is a 2/2 with Infect, and whenever a creature dealt damage by Rot Wolf this turn dies, you may draw a card. So if Rot Wolf happens to be blocked, we can still get some card advantage out of it. And then Viridian Betrayers is a 3/1 for just 3 mana, but it doesn't have Infect unless an opponent is already poisoned. But if an opponent is poisoned, well, they're not going to last very long. And finally, to round out our Infect package, we also have Blight Widow, Corpscur, and Tel-Jalad Fallen. Blight Widow is a 2/4 with Reach and Infect, Corpscur is a 2/2 with Infect, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return target creature card with Infect from your graveyard to your hand. And then Tel-Jalad Fallen is a 3/1 with Protection from Artifacts and Infect. So this has the nice added benefit of not being able to be blocked by artifact creatures. Regardless, now let's move on and talk about some of our many enchantments that are going to help pump these creatures and help take our opponents out. First up, we even have some enchantments that can help us ramp with things like Fawn of Fertility and Omen of the Hunt. Fawn of Fertility is basically an enchantment version of Wayfarer's Bauble. We can sacrifice it to get a basic land into play tapped. And then Omen of the Hunt has Flash. When it enters the battlefield, we can search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle our library, and by paying 2 and a green, we can sacrifice it to scry 2. Again, keep in mind that enchantments are incredibly impactful in this kind of a deck, pumping our creatures and making them evasive. So when it comes to enchantment ramp, we're also going to be running things like Wild Growth, Fertile Ground, New Horizons, Overgrowth, Market Festival, and Dawn's Reflection. Each of these can help make one of our lands even more effective, making it tap for more than 1 mana. But of course, we'll also be running some more standard ramp cards with cards like Rampant Growth and Cultivate, and some cards that can help us draw and ramp with Growth Spiral and Eureka Moment. Growth Spiral is going to have us draw 1 card and put a land from our hand on the battlefield, and Eureka Moment lets us draw 2 cards and do the same. But of course, we also have some enchantments that can help us draw as well. Let's start off with cards like Abundant Growth and Unbridled Growth. Each of these are very similar. They're going to enchant a land and allow it to tap to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool, and Abundant Growth is going to have us draw on ETB, and Unbridled Growth is going to have us draw and we sacrifice it. But of course, we're not done with our card advantage enchantments just yet, so let's move on to Aqueous Form, Cartouche of Knowledge, and Cetessan Training. Aqueous Form says enchanted creature can't be blocked. Whenever enchanted creature attacks, scry 1. Cartouche of Knowledge has when it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has flying. So this can be a great way to ensure that one of our creatures stays evasive even when we don't have enchantments coming into play. And then Cetessan Training can also help us get damage through. It has when it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has Trample. Moving on though, we also have Font of Fortunes, Omen of the Sea, and Raphalos' Gift. Font of Fortunes has pay 1 and a blue, sacrifice Font of Fortunes, draw 2 cards. And then Omen of the Sea has Flash. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2, then draw a card, and by paying 2 and a blue and sacrificing it, we scry 2. Now, Raphalos' Gift isn't an enchantment, but it can really help us out with our enchantments. It says, reveal any number of green cards in your hand, return an enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand for each card revealed this way. So for just 1 mana, a potentially massive recursion spell can be huge. Moving on though, we're also going to be running Thirst for Meaning, Compulsive Research, Beholding Multiverse, and Winged Words. Thirst for Meaning is going to have us draw 3, then discard 2 unless we discard an enchantment, and Compulsive Research is similar, but it's going to make us discard a land and not discard 2. Behold the Multiverse can be foretold. It's going to have us scry 2, then draw 2, and Winged Words is just going to cost 2 mana to draw us 2 as long as we've got a flyer in play. And again, simply by playing an enchantment with our commander in play, we can guarantee that. And actually, there are some really effective enchantments that we can even play more than once. So now let's talk about some fantastic cards like Rancor, Shimmering Wings, and Whip Silk. Rancor has enchanted creature gets +2/+0 and has Trample, and when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return Rancor to its owner's hand. So this is a fantastic pump effect, and even if our creature gets dealt with, well, we get this back to cast it again. Next up, Shimmering Wings says enchanted creature has flying, and by paying a blue, we bounce Shimmering Wings back to our hand. So we can keep bouncing this back to our hand and replaying it to give our creature more and more counters. The same can be said about Whip Silk, which does basically the exact same thing, but it gives enchanted creature reach. Moving on though, we also have some ways to protect our creature with something like Fortitude, Starlit Mantle, and Shielding Plaques. When Fortitude is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we get it right back to our hand. And on top of that, we can sacrifice a forest to regenerate enchanted creature. So this aura is protected in a way, and it also is a fantastic way to protect a creature. Speaking of which, Starlit Mantle says, enchant creature you control, when it enters the battlefield, enchanted creature gains hexproof until end of turn, enchanted creature gets +1/+1. So this can protect a creature and pump it as well. And then Shielding Plaques is going to draw a card when it comes into play, and enchanted creature can't be the targets of spells or abilities your opponents control. Basically, hexproof. Regardless, we've got even more ways to protect our creature with things like Spider Umbra, Eel Umbra, and Vanishing. Spider Umbra says enchanted creature gets ++1 and has reach, and it's got totem armor, so if enchanted creature would be destroyed, instead remove all damage from it and destroy this aura. And then Eel Umbra also has totem armor, and on top of that, it's going to give enchanted creature ++1, and it's got flash. Vanishing, though, is an incredible way to protect a creature. It has pay blue, enchanted creature phases out. When it's phased out, it's essentially treated like it doesn't exist, but it doesn't lose things on it like counters or auras, etc, etc. And then it's going to phase back in before we untap during our untap step. So yes, that can be incredibly effective. Moving on, though, let's talk about some enchantments that can help us deal with our opponent's creatures as well, though. Things like Kasmina's Transmutation, Frogify, Lignify, and... oh, I'm gonna mess up this name. Ichthyomorphosis. Ichthyomorphosis. I think I got it. Kasmina's Transmutation and Frogify basically do the exact same thing. They're going to make the enchanted creature lose all abilities and become a frog with a power and toughness of 1/1. Lignify is going to basically do the exact same thing, but make into a tree folk that's a 0/4. And Ichty, I'm just going to keep calling it Ichty, is going to make enchanted creature lose all abilities and is a blue fish with base power and toughness 0/1. These can be incredibly impactful, especially against commanders, by essentially turning them into a useless creature that essentially no one is going to try to take out. And of course, we also have some more target removal spells with things like Wilt, Nature's Claim, Return to Nature, Seal Primordium, and De-Glamour. Seal Primordium is obviously very effective in this deck, also being an enchantment too. And on top of that, also to throw a wrench into our opponent's plans, of course, we're running some counter spells with things like Mana Leak, Arcane Denial, and Negate. Mana Leak's going to counter target spell its controller pays 3. Arcane Denial is just going to straight up counter any spell, but its controller gets to draw 2 cards, and we draw 1, and then Negate is going to counter target non-creature spell. But we're not quite done with our cards just yet, and we've got some ways to make our cards even more impactful. First up, how about Ancestral Mask, which says enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield. Again, keep in mind this counts our opponent's enchantments as well, but still, yeah, even with just our enchantments, that's pretty incredible. Whatever creature we put this on is going to become absolutely massive in no time. If that's an Infect creature, yeah, that's probably a one-shot kill, and if we put on our commander, it's probably a one-shot kill as well. We also have some ways to build up the number of counters on our creatures that are already getting counters from our commander with things like Thrumming Bird and Guildpact Informant. Each of these essentially have, when they deal combat damage to a player, Proliferate. And Guildpact Informant actually counts Planeswalkers as well, but yeah, proliferating means choose any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of each kind already there. So this can add more and more counters onto our creatures that have counters, and perhaps more importantly, this is incredibly good with poison counters. So even just one poison counter on an opponent can add up with proliferate effects like these. So of course, we're also going to be running some more proliferate cards with Contentious Plan, Steady Progress, and Smell Fear. Both Contentious Plan and Steady Progress are going to have us draw a card and proliferate, and Smell Fear says proliferate target creature control fights up to one target creature you don't control. So yeah, some nice additional benefits, and most importantly, proliferating is incredibly good in this kind of a deck. But now that we've talked about every single non-land card in this deck, let's talk about the price. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, this deck is incredibly budget friendly, with every single card in it being less than $1. So yeah, the estimated cost of this deck is just $23.95. And actually, this deck can be even more affordable if you've already got the basic lands for it, which are currently being counted at 10 cents a piece. And speaking of making the deck even more affordable, if you buy this deck on TCG Player, you might be able to save even more by utilizing heavily played and damage cards, because those cards need a home too. Though do keep in mind that this estimated cost does not include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.